chose to stay in a relationship for the wrong reasons, and now I'm paying the price. I met Jessica during my first year at university. She was everything I'd imagined in a partner: smart, independent, and effortlessly beautiful. There was an energy about her that drew people in, and I was no exception. She had a way of making everything feel lighter, easier. Conversations with her were seamless, and our connection felt like the start of something real. It was almost too good to be true, but I didn't question it at the time. I thought we were both on the same page, that we had found something special. We spent the first few months together like two people lost in the idea of love. We shared dreams of the future, our travels, the places we'd go, the lives we would build together. It felt like we were building a life, not just a relationship. She was my rock, my confidant. I admired her ambition, her drive to succeed, to become someone who made an impact. It inspired me to be better. And for a while, I believed that we were a team, unstoppable together. But over time, I started noticing small shifts. It started with little things, nothing I could really put my finger on, but enough to make me uncomfortable. At first, it was just a couple of missed texts or last minute changes to plans. I didn't mind much. She had a busy schedule, and I was understanding of that. But as the months went by, I began to realize I was always the one making excuses. I was always the one letting things slide, convincing myself that she just needed a little more space, a little more time to get things together. I had started making compromises for her, but without realizing I was compromising myself. I gave up more of my time to accommodate her needs. I sacrificed weekends with friends to spend time with her, always putting her first, always putting us ahead of everything else. But she wasn't doing the same. She'd still go out with her friends without me, would sometimes cancel on our plans for things that seemed less important. It wasn't a huge issue, but over time, it became one. I felt like I was losing pieces of myself while she remained the same, unaffected by my sacrifices. I tried to talk to her about it, but the conversations never went the way I imagined. I would sit down, nervous, and try to express my feelings, but she would brush it off as me overthinking. "You're just being paranoid," she'd say, dismissing my concerns. And for a while, I believed her. It was easier to believe that I was the problem than to accept that something wasn't right in our relationship. It wasn't until one day, when I had planned a weekend getaway for us, that I realized how far things had gone. I had been excited, looking forward to the trip, hoping it would help us reconnect, to remind us both of why we fell in love. But the morning we were supposed to leave, Jessica called me saying she couldn't go. She had too much work, too many things to handle. She sounded like she felt bad, but she still gave me the option to go alone if I wanted to. I was disappointed, but I didn't want to make a scene. I went on the trip by myself, even though it was supposed to be our time. The whole weekend felt off. I kept checking my phone, wondering why she hadn't reached out to see how I was doing. When I came back, everything felt distant. She was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging my return. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I tried to ignore it, but it ate away at me. I had been holding on to this idea of who we were, who we could be, but the reality was so different. There was this growing space between us that neither of us was addressing, but it felt like the elephant in the room. That night, I decided to talk to her. I couldn't keep letting things slide, pretending everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I needed to get things out in the open. I sat across from her, unsure of where to begin, but I knew I had to say something. "I feel like we're drifting apart," I started, my voice tentative. She looked up from her phone, but only for a second. "You're overthinking it," she said, brushing me off with a wave of her hand. "I'm just busy, that's all." But it wasn't just the busyness, it was everything. I wasn't just talking about her workload or her social life. I was talking about the emotional distance that had been growing between us for months. I was talking about how, despite all the things I'd done for her, I felt invisible. I felt like I was giving everything and getting nothing in return. I tried to explain. It's not just that, it's everything. I feel like I'm always the one planning, the one making sacrifices, the one putting in the effort. She sighed, clearly frustrated. "You're making this harder than it has to be." And that was it. There was no understanding, no acknowledgement of how I felt. There was just a dismissal and invalidation of my feelings. I stood there, frozen for a moment, not knowing what to say next. But I knew in that moment that something had changed. It wasn't just about the small things anymore. It was about me, about my own worth and the fact that I was no longer willing to give more than I was getting. I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't. I wasn't angry because I had expected too much. I was angry because I had ignored the signs for so long. I had let her take everything from me and not once questioned whether she was doing the same. The next few days felt like walking through fog. Every interaction with her was more painful than the last. It was like living with a stranger, someone who didn't care, someone who didn't want to fix things. And then came the job offer. The job offer came on a Tuesday, right when I was starting to accept the fact that Jessica and I were on two separate paths. It was for a position in another city, a chance to completely reset. The company was one I had admired for years, and it felt like the perfect opportunity to finally step up in my career. It wasn't just any job offer, it was the kind of opportunity that people waited their whole lives for. It was a promotion I had worked hard for, a position I had earned. I could feel the excitement bubbling up inside me when I saw the email, but at the same time, I felt something else. Hesitation. I had been so focused on Jessica and her needs for so long that I hadn't even considered how something like this could affect us. The offer meant relocating, and I wasn't sure if she'd be on board with the idea. We had built our life here together, and suddenly it felt like I had to make a decision that could change everything. I decided to bring it up to her that night, hoping she'd be as excited as I was. But when I told her about the offer, she barely reacted. "That's great," she said, her voice flat. "But I don't know if it's the right time." I frowned, surprised by her response. "What do you mean? This could be the opportunity of a lifetime. It's exactly what I've been working for. This is my chance." She just shrugged, her gaze wandering away from me. "I don't know, it feels like everything is moving so fast." Her words stung, and I felt that same sense of growing distance between us. How could she not be thrilled? I was about to embark on something incredible, something that would help both of us, and she wasn't even trying to be supportive. "Do you want me to stay here? Stuck?" I asked, the frustration slipping through my voice despite my best effort to keep it calm. "Do you want me to keep holding myself back for a relationship that doesn't even seem to be working anymore?" She finally looked at me, her expression hardening. "What's that supposed to mean?" I said, running a hand through my hair. "This whole thing is falling apart. I've been putting everything into this relationship. I've been putting my life on hold for you, for us, and now you're telling me it's not the right time for me to grow? I can't keep waiting for you to decide whether you want to be in this or not." She stared at me for a long moment, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not about that. It's just, I don't know if I can handle this. You moving, changing, everything changing." Her words hit me hard. "You can't handle this?" The thought echoed in my mind as I stood there, trying to figure out what to say next. This wasn't just about a job. This wasn't even about her. This was about me finally realizing that I had been waiting for someone to make a decision that I should have made for myself a long time ago. "I'm going to take the job," I said firmly. I needed to do this, for me. I couldn't keep living in a state of uncertainty, constantly second-guessing my every move because of someone else's indecision. But she didn't say anything back. She didn't fight me on it, didn't try to make a case for staying. She just stood there, as though she had already checked out mentally. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind was racing with thoughts of what the future would look like without her. It wasn't just the job offer that had unsettled me. It was the fact that for the first time in years I was making a decision that didn't revolve around her, and I didn't know how to feel about that. The next morning I woke up to find her packing a bag. She was leaving. "I think we need some space," she said, avoiding my gaze. I stood frozen, watching her stuff clothes into a suitcase. Part of me felt relief, but the other part of me, the part that had invested so much in her, felt gutted. We hadn't even talked about this, not seriously. I had thought we were still in this together, despite everything, despite the silence and the unspoken tension. "You're just going to leave?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to figure things out," she replied, her words cutting through the space between us. Just like that, she was gone. She left without looking back, without giving me a real explanation. I sat there in the silence, the weight of everything settling over me. I couldn't even bring myself to pick up the phone and tell my family about the job offer. I couldn't tell them that I was moving, not yet, not with all of this hanging in the air. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions of packing for the move, but everything felt off. It felt like I was living in someone else's life. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I had thought we were building a future, that we had our lives figured out, but now I was standing on the edge of a decision that felt like the end of everything I had worked for. And then came the phone call from Jessica. She called me late one night after I'd already packed most of my things. The voice on the other end of the line was shaky. "I made a mistake," she said. I don't know what I was thinking. I felt my heart pound in my chest. I had wanted this, to finally take control of my life, to leave her behind. But now that she was asking for forgiveness, a part of me wasn't sure what to feel. "I need to move forward," I told her, my voice steady, but inside everything was turning. "And I'm going to take the job. I think this is the right thing for me." After the phone call with Jessica, I felt like a part of me had been torn in two. She had left without so much as a goodbye, and now, here she was, calling me, asking for a second chance. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but I wasn't sure what she really wanted. Was it just guilt? Was it regret for what she had done? Or was it a genuine desire to fix things? I had spent the last few days questioning everything, questioning whether I was making the right decision to leave, whether I was abandoning something that could still be salvaged. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the fact that I had given her everything. I had been patient, supportive, and understanding for years, but she hadn't been willing to do the same for me. I had tried to be the partner she needed, and now, for the first time in a long time, I was asking myself what I needed. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty. I kept going back and forth, trying to make sense of what had happened, of what was happening now. Was I making the right decision by leaving her behind, or was I just running away from the inevitable pain of facing the truth? But despite all my doubts, I knew deep down that I was finally starting to take control of my life. I had been living in her shadow for so long, always trying to be the perfect boyfriend, always putting her needs before my own. But now, as I prepared for the move, I was beginning to understand that I had to be selfish for once. I had to focus on me. I called my parents that night, not to tell them about Jessica or our breakup, but to share the news about the job offer. They were thrilled, of course, but there was also a part of me that felt guilty for not being upfront about everything sooner. I had kept so much from them. The growing tension in my relationship, the sacrifices I had made, the frustration that had been simmering for so long. My mom was excited for me, though, and she didn't pry. She just congratulated me and reminded me that it was my time to shine. And for the first time in a while, I actually felt like I deserved it. As the days passed, I threw myself into preparing for the move. Packing up my apartment wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. In fact, it felt cathartic. I had spent so much time living in a space that no longer felt like mine, and as I sorted through the things I was keeping and the things I was leaving behind, I felt like I was shedding a skin that had been holding me back. But then, one evening, as I was going through some old boxes, I found a photo of Jessica and me from our first trip together. We were both smiling, happy, carefree, and for a moment, it hit me. I wasn't just leaving her behind. I was leaving the version of myself who had been with her, the person I had been when we were happy. It was like I was walking away from a part of me that no longer existed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the years we had spent together, all the memories, all the promises. I had been so focused on the future, on moving forward, that I hadn't taken the time to grieve what was ending. It wasn't just the relationship, it was everything that came with it. The life I had imagined for us, the future I thought we'd share. And then, as if to remind me of what I was leaving behind, Jessica texted me again. "I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but I don't want to lose you. I need you." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of how to respond. I had already made up my mind. I was leaving. But there was still a part of me that felt the pull, that still wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that things could be fixed, that we could go back to how it was before, but I couldn't keep holding on to a version of her that didn't exist anymore. I couldn't keep fighting for something that wasn't real. I sent her a message back, simple but clear. "I think we both need space to figure things out. I'm moving forward, Jessica. It's time for me to start living for me." It was the hardest thing I had ever written, but it was the truth. The days following that text felt strange, like I was living in a world where everything had shifted, but I hadn't fully accepted it yet. Jessica didn't text back. There were no apologies, no begging. She just stopped. And I think that's when I knew for sure that I had made the right decision. By the time I left for the new city, I was calmer than I thought I'd be. I had made my peace with the situation, The weight of the past was still there, but it was lighter now, as if I had finally let go of the dead weight that had been holding me down. Starting the new job felt like a fresh start, a new chapter. I could finally breathe again. There were still moments when I missed Jessica, when I wondered what could have been, when I remembered the good times we had. But those moments were fleeting. They didn't define me anymore. I wasn't the same person who had been with her. I wasn't the same person who had sacrificed so much. I was someone new now, someone who had learned to put himself first, someone who had started living for himself. And that was enough.